We're back tonight on In Focus. Few people have intimate knowledge of PRASA's infrastructure and desperation than rail researcher David Williams. He recently wrote a comprehensive document on the extent of the challenges facing the rail agency. Williams joins us now and talking to the situation at PRASA and whether PRASA can be fixed. David, good evening and thank you very much for your time and for joining us on In Focus. Are we taking the necessary steps as far as you're concerned that must be taken to resolve the rail system situation efficiently?
Well, the first thing to say is that there's a long history of decline here. So we're not talking about the last couple of years, we're talking about the last 15, 20 years. And the Zondo Commission has simply exposed what has been going on with corruption, and the decline is much bigger than that. And I think what is significant is that now Chief Justice Zondo, he was the Deputy Chief Justice when he did the report, has said that more investigation needs to be done, and that indicates perhaps how deep the rot is in PRASA, on the railways generally in South Africa, and by and large, the railways are dysfunctional as a result.
So if we are to take, for example, what the minister is saying at face value, saying, no, we are fixing things. For example, negotiations are underway around those residents that have built their shacks on the track. They were talking, for example, and maybe even going on site about replacing some of the overhead cabling that has been stolen and so on and so forth. If we fix that, will the passengers be coming back?
Well, you have to look at the scale of the destruction of the railway network. So you talk about people living on the tracks in the Western Cape. Those people have been living there for years, and there's no sign that they will be taken off the tracks or a solution will be found. In Johannesburg and the reef, as it's known, Springs, Randfontein, Johannesburg, Pretoria, Vereeniging, it was a massive commuter network which is now silent. There are 4-track railway networks which are not operating at all. And the estimate is from the engineers that it could cost 5 million rand per kilometre to restore this network to what it was. So the minister may well say, yes, we are fixing things, but this is on a scale far beyond Eskom, for example. At least Eskom still has power stations that are working. Eskom provides us with load shedding, but it still provides electricity. The passenger rail agency is providing no trains. The system is extinct. It is dysfunctional. And to restore it would be an enormous effort of time, money, energy, policy, and so on. So I don't think we're being told the truth about this. And what the Zondo Commission has revealed is that the rot goes very deep in PRASA. It has taken 10 to 15 years to get the railways to a state where they don't function, and it may well take the same time to get them back to functioning.
Yeah. You said one of the policy issues that would need to be addressed was the splitting of the passenger rail from the freight rail as a policy matter. Is that just a thing of if we can get those two entities talking to one another, certainly something could happen, as you put it? You say currently those two entities are just not communicating. Or are we looking at a situation where we will have to undo the splitting and put them back together? And what would be the benefit of either?
I think you've gone to the heart of the problem. What they shouldn't have done was split the freight rail from the passenger rail service because they share the same tracks. So each reports to a different minister. Transnet Freight Rail, which is looking after freight, reports to Pravin Gordhan, who is the Minister of Public Enterprises. The Passenger Rail Agency reports to Fikile Mbalula, who is the Minister of Transport. So already you have a dysfunctional structure where trains that should be running on the same tracks are answering to different ministries. They did that in the early 2000s on a kind of business strategy thing of separating freight and passengers, but it's caused a lot of dysfunction. The first step should be for the president to say, you guys need to get together. I'm going to scrap the separate ministries, and rail needs to answer to one person. That, of course, leaves aside all the corruption issues which have affected passenger rail. So there are many dimensions to this crisis, and I am, as a railway enthusiast and person who's followed it all my life professionally and as a journalist, I wonder whether we can ever get railways back again in South Africa. And I don't think the government is acknowledging the seriousness of the problem.
What has happened to the 3 layers of experience you're saying that were taken off because of the hunting down of the corrupt within the system? Did they just leave? Are they elsewhere? Are they applying their trade in other sectors?
I think there are still layers of experience. I think there are still people who can do things. I think the corruption issue has meant that everyone has been paralyzed. So even the good guys are kind of prevented from doing anything because everything is on hold. And I think an organization really battles when everyone in it is scared of what is happening with the management and what might happen to them. And I get the sense of both Transnet Freight Rail and PRASA is that the good people are probably in limbo or on hold. We don't have a chief executive at the moment at PRASA. It has a history of dysfunctional boards, interim boards, and there's been no drive and purpose to make things happen.
You estimate, well, via your conversation with one of the engineers, that if only one team was working on this, it would take 15 years to fix. With a number of teams, I suppose, that are currently at work, how long do you think it will take, and at what price tag?
Well, you've picked up on the important statistics. I think the minister has made it, Minister Fikile Mbalula has made great play of the Simonstown-Cape Town line, which apparently is operational again. But that's really a showcase middle-class tourist line. What we're looking at is the main commuter lines from Cape Town to the Cape Flats. We're looking at Johannesburg to Soweto, where we have 4-track railway lines that used to commute thousands, hundreds of thousands of people per week. These are silent, and these lines are just not operating. So I think the scale of the problem has not been acknowledged. It's partly corruption, it's partly neglect, and while all this has been going on, the infrastructure has been stolen or removed. So the overhead equipment you mentioned earlier, Thaba, the overhead equipment on all these intensive commuter networks has just been stolen, removed. To restore it and then to protect it will take billions of rand, and I'm not sure that money is available.
And if indeed we were to bring in private sector players, because as you put it, we're not sure whether that money is available, but there is a sense that private players have got the money and they would need to go into some kind of public-private partnership to assist. Would that help speed things up and certainly stop the collapse?
Well, that's your second great question of the evening. And private sector players are not going to come in because they feel wonderful about railways. They will want a return on their investment. So they need to know from the government, if they come in, what the return will be, who will pay for what. The network has been neglected. The tracks are rusted, the stations are destroyed, the overhead equipment has been stolen and is not there. Who is going to restore that? Is the private sector player going to say to the government, you need to fix the network before we bring our expertise or investment in? Or is the government expecting the private sector to invest and get a return? The private sector will not get involved if there is no return. And I'm not sure that debate has even happened yet.
David, we appreciate your time and your analysis this evening here on In Focus. That is researcher and rail enthusiast David Williams.